Mr. President, I want to take a moment to salute my colleagues who are departing the Senate at the conclusion of the 115th Congress. Bob Corker of Tennessee, Jeff Flake of Arizona, Orrin Hatch of Utah, Heidi Heitkamp of North Dakota, Dean Heller of Nevada, Joe Donnelly of Indiana, Claire McCaskill of Missouri, Bill Nelson of Florida, and John Kyle of Arizona. Every one of these members has dedicated themselves to serving their constituents, their states, and our country. The institution of the Senate and the nation as a whole are stronger because of their service and commitment. I've been privileged to serve with each and every one of them and want to spend a few moments thanking each of them for the wisdom and experience they have brought to their work and for their friendship. Bob Corker and I worked on many foreign policy matters together, given my role as ranking member on the Armed Services Committee and his as chairman of the Foreign Relations Committee. I have appreciated Bob's willingness to reach across the aisle in an attempt to remove barriers to gaining bipartisan cooperation on bills and other policy matters. I also appreciate how much Bob was willing to speak his mind and stand up to administrations of his party and of my party over the last several years, and particularly with respect to his very astute analysis of the situation with Russia and other major issues confronting the United States today. He has long focused on international development and human rights, causes I've been glad to support him, including a joint resolution supporting a diplomatic solution in Yemen and condemning the murder of Jamal Khashoggi, promoting economic growth in developing countries through U.S. business investment in the recently enacted BUILD Act, and consistently fighting to end modern slavery. We also served together in the Banking, Housing, and Urban Affairs Committee. Here, too, he spent his time reaching across the aisle, trying to find constructive solutions and informing our work on issues ranging from financial system reforms to housing finance. We'll miss his bipartisan spirit, and I wish Bob only the best as he leaves the Senate. I've also had the privilege and pleasure to join with Jeff Flake at many moments. Last week, we were at an event together honoring the late Senator John McCain. He reminisced about the times he worked with John on key policies that aimed to put our country over party politics. He's worked hard to resolve tough issues like immigration reform and protecting the special counsel investigation. And his preferred route to addressing these challenges was not to increase the heated rhetoric, but to turn down the volume so that all sides could be heard, and so the Senate could try to move forward in a rational and bipartisan way. Just as with Bob Corker, Jeff's approach will be missed in this body. I hope others on each side of the aisle recognize what they've done and take up their mantles. Orrin Hatch has long served the people of Utah with distinction as chairman of 3 committees: Finance, Judiciary, and what was then called the Labor Committee, now the Help Committee. He worked across the aisle to pass landmark laws, often with his friend, Senator Ted Kennedy. He was instrumental in passing critical laws like expanding access to health care to children through the CHIP program and providing help to those suffering from HIV/AIDS through the Ryan White Care Act. I was pleased to have the opportunity to work with him in 2005, 2010, and 2015 to reauthorize the Stem Cell Therapeutic and Research Act, to build upon and improve the National Marrow Donor Program and the National Cord Blood Inventory, to better treat diseases and expand access to life-saving therapies. Most recently, he helped enact the Music Modernization Act, which I know meant a lot to him, given his own musical interest and talents. He ends his service here as the Senate's President Pro Tem. I wish him health and happiness as a retirement, and I think, though, that his retirement will be just as active as his days here in the United States Senate, given his personality and also given his determination to serve wherever he is. Heidi Heitkamp, as she put it, beat the odds to get here. A breast cancer survivor, the lesson she learned from that experience was to use what time she has given for good and noble purposes. And she chose, for good or for bad, to come to the United States Senate and has served a noble purpose with noble actions. We are so grateful that she did. Heidi has been a tireless champion of North Dakota throughout her time in the Senate. She worked hard to advance opportunities for Native Americans and veterans, to boost funding for flood protection, and to secure the northern border, to name just a few. She and I worked together on the Banking, Housing, and Urban Affairs Committee. Most recently, I was particularly appreciative of her insight on proxy access and her support for my legislation on this matter, S. 3614, the Corporate Governance Fairness Act. Heidi has also been a relentless advocate for a functioning export-import bank, an issue critical to many North Dakotans. Her voice and insight will be missed on this issue and so many others that come before the Banking Committee. In addition, over the last 2 years, Heidi has taken on the issue of maternal mortality rates in our country. More women in the United States die from pregnancy-related complications than in most other developed nations, and the number of maternal deaths is increasing. This has impacted so many moms and families in North Dakota and across the country, and Heidi has worked across the aisle to put forth solutions. In the coming days, we expect President Trump to sign into law her legislation, which I was privileged to co-sponsor, to help address this issue. I salute her and wish her the best. Dean Heller and I worked together with a great deal of energy and commitment when both of our states and our nation was in deep crisis in the aftermath of the Great Recession. Nevada and Rhode Island took turns having the sad distinction of the highest unemployment levels in the country. We worked to ensure extensions of emergency unemployment assistance in order to provide relief to Americans who lost their jobs through no fault of their own. Our work together was of great importance, and I wish him the best in all his future endeavors. Now, I want to turn my attention to 3 members I had the privilege to work with and serve with on the Armed Services Committee. Joe Donnelly has been the ranking member of the Strategic Forces Subcommittee. He chose this position because of the Navy's installation in Indiana called the Naval Surface Warfare Center, Crane. This installation serves as the primary engineering center for the Navy's Strategic Systems Program, which manages our fleet of ballistic missile weapon systems. I had the chance to join Joe on a visit, and I was most impressed with their capabilities, but more impressed with his tireless efforts to ensure that this facility, and indeed all of Indiana, had the very best. In addition to ensuring our men and women in uniform have the resources and tools they need, like those manufactured at Crane, Joe has always been concerned about caring for veterans and is a well-known advocate for suicide prevention programs. Indeed, it was his legislation more than any others that helped establish programs to assist veterans and to assist active duty personnel who are coping with suicidal tendencies. And that was something Joe did with great passion and great commitment and great success. Joe assumed the seat that Senator Richard Lugar previously held and carried on the legacy of Senator Lugar's Cooperative Threat Reduction Program into the future, which today continues to secure stocks of nuclear, chemical, and biological agents around the world. His work on reducing stockpiles of these dangerous weapons is a critical component of making the world safer for generations to come. Joe Donnelly has done great work here, and I wish him well. He is a gentleman and someone I admire and respect immensely. I've also been extremely proud to serve alongside Claire McCaskill on the Armed Services Committee. Claire has been a leader of the Senate effort to prevent and respond to sexual assaults in our military. She was a principal co-sponsor of the Victims Protection Act, a bipartisan package of reforms that represent a substantial leap forward in preventing and responding to sexual assaults in the military. And is a testament to Claire's determination and hard work that these laws are in place, but also she's the first to recognize that our work is not done. She was continually involved in ensuring that what legislative initiatives we pass were actually implemented. And that's an ongoing work, and Claire's efforts have given us a strong foundation to continue those efforts. In addition to the Victims Protection Act, Claire led the effort to reform management of Arlington National Cemetery to address significant problems with burial of service members and helped to establish a single agency responsible for POW, MIA recovery, and accounting efforts. Claire has also worked tirelessly to rein in wasteful wartime contracting practices, following in the footsteps of another Missouri senator and one of her political heroes, President Harry S. Truman. Claire has been a steadfast advocate for oversight throughout her career, and her work to root out waste and strengthen accountability has made a difference in how effectively the government works for the American people. Again, I wish her well in the future and know it will be a future that is also committed to service to others. Bill Nelson has been a close and valued colleague for many years in the Armed Services Committee. He's the only senator to have flown in space and has, as a result, been our acknowledged expert to both Republicans and Democrats on matters pertaining to space. His knowledge of military and civilian space issues was particularly important during our debate on replacing the Russian RD-180 rocket engine, which is used in a number of our national security launches, with a U.S. variant. That debate, along with his leadership on NASA reauthorization legislation, has introduced competition for space launch to a wide array of new companies. And as a nation, we are much better off for his efforts. Because of Senator Nelson's leadership, we now have a vibrant and entrepreneurial launch and satellite industry that reaches well outside the traditional national security realm and is lowering the cost of access to space. Recently, he took on the cyber mission as the ranking member on the Cybersecurity Subcommittee. His steady hand was integral in guiding this new subcommittee during a time in which we faced countless cyber threats. We will miss his knowledge and leadership as we debate pressing issues of our national security in the next Congress and Congresses to come. He has also done able work as the lead Democrat on the Commerce Committee, fighting for consumers, and as a strong advocate for stricter gun control legislation. We worked together on the 3D Printed Gun Safety Act of 2018 and on the Extreme Risk Protection Order and Violence Protection Act. I also want to thank him for his leadership in enacting the Military Lending Act in 2006, which caps the annual interest rate for an extension of consumer credit to a service member or his or her dependents at 36%. Because of his efforts, service members and their families have strong consumer protections that defend them against unscrupulous lenders who unpatriotically prey upon them while they're selflessly and courageously defending our nation. He has done a remarkable job because this legislation truly does protect our protectors, those men and women who serve overseas, so they are not taken advantage here back at home. And I've enjoyed our time serving together and wish him the best as he goes forward. He is a great American. Finally, I'd like to recognize Senator Jon Kyl and thank John for his willingness to serve again following the passing of Senator John McCain. I had the privilege of serving with him in his prior service in the United States Senate. He served for many years in the Republican leadership, including as Minority Whip. He was also a long-standing member of the Finance Committee. I was not on this committee, but given my advocacy for extending unemployment insurance, for which there was a critical need at the time, I did have a chance to serve with him on the Conference Committee for the Middle Class Tax Relief and Job Creation Act of 2012. It was a pleasure to serve with him. He is a man of principle, a man of great decency and dignity, someone who has honored the Senate with his service, honored Arizona with his service, and makes us all very proud to have known him. It was indeed a pleasure to serve briefly, all too briefly, with him as a member of the Armed Services Committee. I would like to thank him for his service, wish him well as he leaves this body once more, and to all my colleagues, to give them my greatest respect and admiration for their service to this states, to the United States Senate, and to the United States of America. And with that, Mr. President, I would yield the floor.